I'm Václav, I'm from kiwi.com and I work as a mobile test automation engineer for platform team of our mobile team. And I'm here to present a beginner's guide to mobile UI tests, as I call this. Some agenda for this meeting. This won't probably take an hour, it will be like half an hour presentation, so yeah. We will go through some background of our apps. I will present which tools we are using for our automation, what are some basic rules for UI testing and UI tests in general, then our CICD implementation of UI tests, and we can have some discussion after this. Okay, so I was told that on the beginning of every QA related presentation there should be a testing pyramid. For those who don't know what this is basically how your tests should look like for any project, not only mobile project, for any project in general. You have your code, you have your app, and then you write the tests. You should have the majority of your tests should be unit tests, so the test of code, then some integration and system integration, or maybe API tests, etc. And then you should have end-to-end UI tests or end-to-end manual tests, possibly both or ideally both. So some general info about our apps. We have two apps, both are we have one app but for two platforms. One is for Android and one is for iOS. The Android one is written in Kotlin/Java. Some code is in Java, most of the code is in Kotlin. And the iOS app is in Swift/Objective-C. We have around 100K users, active users daily, or 120K active users daily on each platform, and around 30,000 downloads on each platform daily. I will give you the presentation after this, and there's links for our apps. So which tools are we using for automation? For Android we are using, for UI automation I mean, for Android we are using Espresso UI Automator, and our code of the tests is written in Kotlin. And for iOS we are using XCTest framework, and we have our own utilities. Everything is based on Swift for iOS. So what is Espresso and what is UI Automator for Android? These are two frameworks from Google, and they can be used for UI testing, for doing basically anything that the user can do, tapping, typing text, interacting, scrolling, etc., etc. It's only for Android, and it's made by Google, and it works with native apps, and maybe if you have like a multi-platform integration, that should work too. Okay, so you may have like a multi-platform integration or part of your app maybe in multi-platform, some kind of multi-platform language. And you can test this part of your app with these frameworks as well. And it also works with web views, so if you have like some part of your app in web view, you can test it as well. There are links for these two frameworks, and the greatest, like, okay, how do you start with this? They have test recorder. I will talk about test recorder later, and UI inspector I will talk about it later as well, so let's skip this for now. What is XCTest? It's a framework from Apple used for all kinds of tests on iOS. Again, it works only for iOS, and again, it works with native apps, multi-platform parts of your apps, web views, etc., etc. It also has test recorder. I will talk about it again later, which is good, right? It's not. Okay. So how should your UI test look like? is there anyone who ever wrote a UI test for anything? Web, mobile, anything? No? Yeah? Okay, 1, 2. Okay, nice. Your test should be stable, maintainable, and fast. It's not only about your test. Your test should be stable, but also your framework should be stable. Your simulators or devices which you are running your tests on should be stable. Your test should be maintainable, and it should be easy to fix, easy to debug. All the problems should be basically easy to work around or fix. And you should also, or your test should be fast, or not only the test, but also the development of new tests and the fixes of new tests. So yeah, I used my drawing skills to draw this, and yeah, this is like a combination of stability, maintainability, and speed should give you a perfect UI test. But when you look on it, what about these like green parts or yellow or what's the color? You cannot really have stable and fast test without being maintainable. You can't really have maintainable and fast test without being stable. So yeah, I threw this to trash and drew this. So again, your test should be stable, maintainable, and fast, with the priority being the stability, then the maintainability, and then the speed. Because if you have stable and maintainable tests, you don't really, or it's nice to have them fast, but you don't really need that. Okay. So what are some basic rules of building a good UI test? You shouldn't rely on test recorder. You should make use of console when possible. You should deal with asynchronous events correctly. You should use IDs to identify your elements which you want to interact with. You should store the paths to your elements in variables. You should use methods for your repetitive test code, and you should use setup, teardowns, and annotations. Yeah, I will get to that later. So this is a test which was generated by your test recorder. It's iOS test, as you can see, for iOS application. And yeah, this is, yeah, you can see what I was doing. I tapped some help static text, then I tapped some close button, then I tapped some refer a friend text, then I tapped some cancel button, etc., etc. This was generated by the stock test recorder which you have in Xcode. This is, on the other hand, the test that you can write yourself. You have the path to your elements. You have I have stored them in variables, which I'm later tapping. So you can clearly see the difference between having this mess and having this fairly nice code, let's say. So another part, you should deal with events correctly. You shouldn't use sleeps. You should use waits or wait for something. And what's the difference? Basically, the sleep blocks your main thread which the application is running on. So if you use if you have some login button, let's say, and it's not on the screen at the beginning of the test, and you want to wait for it, you shouldn't put sleep for 20 seconds there, because it will block your test for 20 seconds. It's one thing. And the next thing is that the button may not load in the 20 seconds. On the other hand, if you use wait for something, you just put wait for existence, and you just wait for the button, and you put timeout for 20 seconds, then after, if the button appears within these 20 seconds, it proceeds, and if it doesn't, you can fail the test. Yeah, it's some demo time. So I have prepared 2 tests for I don't know if you can see this. Okay, we have a test that sleeps for 15 seconds and then taps some button or some static text. Before it logs in and switches to tap. This is not important. And then we have the same text which waits for existence of this element and then taps it. And if it's not visible, then you can fail the test. Okay, so I will play this one, and yeah, I will succeed it. Okay. Yeah, I will point out the speed of the test or the speed of okay. So first it does some logout and then some sign-ins, and okay, so the test finished. So I will run it again. Yeah, you can see it like logs out and logs in, and then it waits for sleeps for 15 seconds, and then it tries to tap some kind of cell that with this static text. So yeah, it signs out. Then it signs in. It will work hopefully this time. Yeah. The difference is that this test ran for 36 seconds, and this one should run for around 20 seconds. So it's like 15 seconds shorter than the one with sleep. Hopefully this will work this time. Okay, so it logs in, goes to some cell, and then checks if the cell is visible and taps on it. And it took around 18 seconds. So this was 36 and this was 18. So this is like 2 times faster than the one with sleep. You should identify your elements properly. So what is an element or UI element? It's any user accessible element or user interferable element, which can be button, text field, static text, etc., collection view, etc., etc. How can you identify an element? You can use accessibility ID of the element or any such ID, element string or the string which is on element, element's position, relative or absolute, or element's index. Yeah. So what is an accessibility identifier? This is an iOS only thing. You can set, like, you have your button and it has some title, add another passenger, let's say, and you can put like accessibility. You can set an accessibility identifier for this button, which the test then can interfere with. I have set some accessibility identifiers. I have set them for the elements. So the button has some accessibility identifier. This is not visible to the user in app in any way, of course. And then I have some method which uses the button, this one. The path to the button is up, collection views buttons, and then I have the accessibility identifier, which was set here, and then I can interact with it. So I have add another button. I'm scrolling to it, I'm waiting for it, and I'm tapping it. If it's not visible, I'm failing the test. Yeah. On Android, it's pretty similar. This is ID of some element of negative button. Yeah, this one. This is the view layout viewer, layout inspector. Sorry. You have like ID/negative button is this button here. And I have it in this variable, and I'm waiting for the object with this ID, and then I'm doing something with it. I'm returning true, but yeah, you can do anything with it. Okay, so this is one more thing. This is layout inspector. It's Android Fink only, as far as I know, and you can print your whole layout of your application, and then you can use it for debugging or for writing and automated tests. So you should store the paths to your elements in variables. This is probably, if you've ever programmed anything, this might be like, this is probably what you are doing in any method and in any code, but in tests it's not the same as in code. As you can see, I have one API test which is here, which is quite short. It's like request some token, and then it's runs the query to the API, and then it checks some stuff. So this is a fairly easy test. It's not UI test, of course, but if you have like UI tests, this gets fairly complicated, because you have your test here, and you are calling one method which calls another method, etc., etc. And the code is, you have a lot of code before you get like to the bottom of let's say tapping or typing something. So yeah, you should, for your test purposes, you should store your variables, your paths in variables, and then you can interfere with it. This is probably more like prettier than this. Okay, the last, or not the last one, before last point, is you should use methods for your repetitive test code. So I have this method which logs me in with email in tests. It has some buttons and variables. It taps on some buttons, then it calls another method, etc., etc. I use this method in 41 tests, or 41 appearances in code. So I just saved, let's say you have like line 75 and 100, I just saved, let's say, 1,000 lines of code. This is one thing. And another thing, you can, if 40 tests start failing, then you probably only need to fix one method, or maybe two. But if you have like a code for login in every test without a method, you would need to go through all your tests and fix thousands of lines of code, and this is prettier probably for you, as you can see. Okay, so the last point of how a good UI test should look like, you should use setup, teardowns, and annotations. What is setup and what is teardown? It's like pieces of code which run before and after your test. So you can put any repetitive code which is same for every test you have, which for me, for iOS, here is some initial configuration which I'm running the app with, some language local, and there's like logout method hidden in this method. And after the test, I terminate the app and I tear down the test. And the same is for Android. We have annotations. This is JUnit annotation, I think. And then before the test, this runs. This sets up your environment and your testing environment. This sets up some watchers, and in this use, this logs in the user. So I have a class of tests, which every one of these tests require a user to be logged in with this email and this password, and this runs before every test and checks if the user is logged in with the email we want, and if it's not, then it logs out and logs in again with the correct email. So last part of my presentation, what is the CI and CD settings for UI tests? Well, your standard settings of CICD is probably something like you code something on your branch and then you push it, and then it runs on some DevOps platform like GitLab or yeah. Then it runs on some server and does build, tests, and maybe some code analysis like lint or SonarQube, etc. Well, we get to the problems with UI tests because they are slow. Even if you have like nice framework and nice tests and everything, they are slow. Usual end-to-end UI test takes at least 15 seconds. If you have hundreds of them, it will probably take hours. So how do you put like UI tests in this? Because sometimes you need to release something and you don't want to wait for the whole day for UI tests to finish. So what we did, we split our tests into two targets basically. One are smoke tests and one are regression tests. The smoke tests test the main functionality of the app, that the user can log in, search for something, and he gets like search results, he can buy a ticket with us, etc., etc. And then we have some regression tests, which are tests that are not like the user, even if the bug is there in the app, the user can still log in, check his bookings, check his boarding passes, etc. So it's not like crucial bug and not so crucial test. And we run the first ones, the smoke tests. We run on every commit to devel branch or development or master branch. We have like two main branches for iOS. It's devel and master. It's similar for Android. So I will present just iOS here. And for every commit to devel and every push to devel, the UI tests, the smoke ones, the smoke ones run for, it's plus minus 20 minutes. It's around 50 tests or something. And then we can, if you commit to another branch than master or devel, you can run it manually. If you want to give the build to testers or put it on test flight, you will run these UI tests. It's those smoke tests, and every night the regression tests are running. It takes around an hour. So yeah, this is the probably best CI settings that we could think of, and it works. Any questions to this? And again, I'm sorry for the blinking and the technical issues. No? Okay. You can contact me if you have any questions. There's my LinkedIn, and yeah. Thank you for your attention.